Okay, here we go. Well, here's part of the problem. They lied. We need to immediately prosecute people in California, across California leadership, for the past almost 45 years because the data's in. The data's in, and they lied. They lied beyond the shadow of a doubt. It's impossible for them to lie their way out of it. And here's what happened. Basically, they told you your car was junk, and they pressured you, they bothered you, they harassed you. Um, they did profiling on you. Now, the problem is with this is you end up looking around and you end up finding paperwork, respective historically generated by the Royal German Empire, that passes into deliberate creation for Marxist, communist, and socialist to utilize to destabilize people's lives. literally, putting false taxes to gain control of people and basically divest them of assets, reduce their financial capabilities deliberately. So here we have repeated instances of this evolving forward as we have parties in the United States that literally for decades started lying, started harassing people, and started what? Divesting people of assets. Now, the translative effect, because these people were harassed, didn't get to use the asset, and the asset didn't continue to mature, is a massive list. It's a massive list, and there's a lot of people who've left the state. And the interesting thing is we actually have records for most all of this. We even have the records for the false profiling. We've got all kinds of records that exist beyond the shadow of a doubt of what people did. And the problem is, here's the problem. It keeps amassing, and it shows us the source origins of the data. Deliberate designs by foreign instruments designed purposely to destabilize people's lives, people's businesses, people's governments. It was on the mass destabilization list of how to do this. So it's also in the push for false governance. And it's a considered piece of poison throughout universities, deliberately inserted into scholastic mechanisms for the purpose of attacking capitalism, for the purpose of attacking people's personal assets, for the purpose deliberately to divest individuals of having assets and financial capabilities. This means that what we have are people aiding and abetting foreign instruments who are enemies of the country. It's treason. The quantification is now perfect. It's treason. It's not that these people, they say, oh, apparently that was wrong. No, it's not that they were just wrong. The data's finally in a massive way. They intentionally committed treason. They aided and abetted foreign enemies in destabilizing citizens' lives. This happened throughout the country, not just California. So there's no statute of limitations whatsoever on treason, so we need to start prosecuting these people. Because the importance of prosecuting is to say that we actually already have a whole long list of laws on the books. We don't actually need more laws. People say, oh, we need to pass a new law. No, we don't. We need to enforce the ones we already have. So we have leadership. We go after number one. This means we go after legislatures. We go after various big leaders because, here's the thing. when I researched this, do you know what I found? Because people say, well, a lot of this happened at local levels. Yeah, but hold on a minute. Hold on. Do you know what I found? What I found was that there were people in state government pushing the items. They were not only just pushing the items, they were going to local governments and saying, look, we got these new items and we want you to add these packets to your new laws and create these new laws. And then it's like there's a fine line, oh yeah, well, if you don't implement these, well, that'll jeopardize your additional funding. In other words, or else. In other words, they ordered local municipal governments to file and make false laws. The state did this. The legislatures of California did this year after year after year. I mean, basically, they went up to local municipal governments and put a gun to their head and said, we want you to attack your citizens and divest them of assets and capabilities. We want you to cause them to lose extra work. We want you to create false laws and extract money out of them. I'm being, so you're a little on the blunt side there. I barely scratched the surface. I have barely scratched the surface of what these people have done. And this is something that's so bad, so horrible, we have to prosecute parties for this. The quantification, the math on this, year after year after year, when you sit there and do the analysis year after year after, and then it gets to decade after decade after decade, and you find that these people went to lectures, communist lectures, socialist lectures, and that these people were passed packets of information to perpetuate. And this happened in universities. It happened with individual leadership, going to different types of government conferences, all over the world. All over the world. So we have illegal instruments that are diabolically opposing the Constitution of the United States, engineering mechanisms to pass demographic weapons designed to destabilize American citizens intentionally. Intentionally. Can't emphasize enough. Did I mention intentionally? That's treason. We can't have a world with over 6 billion people in it, with the majority of them being sick, brainwashed from these various mechanisms that trace back to the Royal German Empire. We have to begin the sequence of prosecution on these parties immediately, because they don't have a leg to stand on. This is true mathematics. This is quantification. This is true mathematics. There's no escaping it. This is not hate. This is not some people laying a bunch of weird stuff out. These other people's claims don't quantify. There's no truth to what many of these people are saying, and they just keep pointing the fingers and making false accusations. There's no mathematical proof for their arguments whatsoever. None. So people, this is another item. We need to get it done. The compensation here is massive. And this means that we have to give priorities on loans to people. The state's got a problem, having a problem coming up to the money. And the court system would not follow the law when I filed lawsuits. The judges went into treason mode. They refused to adhere to common logic, and they aided and abetted deliberately other parties to defuse the situation. When you come up and you put perfect quantification understanding in front of a judge, it's treason, and the judge goes into rebellion. No excuse for that. Now, furthermore, it's not just the attack on the assets. You have people that went to court that argued all kinds of arguments that were constitutional arguments. And the judges just bowed their neck and flatly refused to do mathematical quantification in relation to United States constitutional format. They just bowed their neck and did it anyhow. So now we've got a series of judges that if we examine their heads, if we put their heads into fMRIs, and we run through the tactical table quantification, we get to see the poison in their brain. We get to see the ridiculousness of them claiming false power. False power with no constitutional justification whatsoever. In argument after argument. They sat there as people put the truth, quantified truth on the table, and they refused to add it up. Or they saw how it added up and they just bowed their neck and did it anyhow. Treason. Actively aiding and abetting items that were deliberately designed to attack capitalism, to attack the Constitution of the United States. There are so many judges that involve themselves, we need to remove their retirements. We need to start off with prosecuting many of these judges and immediately say, why didn't you have people brought in perfect quantification in arguments? And they refuse to do it. They refuse to do tactical table arguments. That's treason. Treason. We have to take actions immediately and deal with this. Perfect mathematical quantification. We have to restore people's assets. It's going to cost the state a fortune to restore all these vehicles that they've stolen. And in many cases, there's not enough of them left to restore all of them. And with many people, they're going to say, I don't care how much it costs. I want my prize back. I want my item back. Yeah, a lot of people say, no, you don't understand. That was a magic vehicle. I inherited it. I inherited that. Nobody has a right to take that away from me. And by the way, it's a continued ascending asset. I want my exact continued ascending asset returned. Period. So I mean, and some people say, well, what's the equivalent? Well, the problem is the court will say, well, we're just going to arbitrarily put a price on it. No. Because they're continuing ascending assets, which means we're going to have to keep reappraising the loss differential factor. There can't be any of this, we're going to cut it off and we're going to limit it. Stopping these people. See, part of the problem with government is they think that they can do the limited liability factor. And there's one area, let me explain this. There's one area that you never, ever, ever want to allow government to do. And that is to claim limited liability. Because the moment you do stuff like that, then they go carte blanche. They're like, oh, well, we can do anything we want. Because if we finally get caught doing something wrong, they might force us to pay for it, right? Oh, and yeah, we'll just twist it and do this and that, and then we'll discount it and cut it off. No, you can't allow them to do that. You can't have people running around destroying ascending assets. You have to replace the ascension value and guarantee the same ascension factors. I mean, and this is, and I'm one of the few people that could do this. As governor, I can do this. I know how to do this. It's easy quantification. You just set up an expanding loan option respective to, oh, well, yeah, it needs to be readjusted. Great. You get a new loan option to rebuild brand new assets. New assets. See, here's the beauty of my types of compensation, by the way. When somebody builds a new asset, guess what? You get to appraise the new created asset. That justifies strengthening the dollar. It strengthens currency. See, if we set up separate currencies, I have a whole plan on that too, by the way, for some of these compensative items, as we set up new currency and we take a hold of appraisal capabilities, we can say, well, because this is a settlement, we can declare that this item has special status. That means you can basically say, well, the federal government didn't do its job right, so we can strip the federal government of being able to do appraisal and print based upon that situation, because it's a compensation. So we have to make a new type of currency. We make a new type of currency, and it's a brand new standalone currency. You do it as a blockchain, and it's always going to keep holding its value. Why? You lock in value and you guarantee forward ascension only. And you augment it under the fact of understanding that there has to be a new augmenting allowance. When it's discovered that there's an ascending asset that someone else has, but there wasn't enough to replace yours, so now we have to go by what these other ones are going by, which means constant new reappraisals, constant new upgrade. Then the money is available for what? For stimulus. For stimulus to create new assets, which also is going to be a new currency on these particular specialized compensation items. Plus, we make the blockchain where in the event there ends up becoming a profit area that is taxable. I'm not sure how that's going to work, because when I did all the quantification, you're not going to be able to tax people on these certain types of funds because they're compensation for wrongdoing. They're tax exempt. Do you like that part, the tax exempt part? Yeah. But in the event that they would become taxable in some way, we'll talk about the few rare ways that certain changes could occur that could change that. There are certain ways where someone could change that because they decided to do something way extra to something. It's like, oh, I decided that I wanted to upgrade it, and I deep dipped gold on all the knobs and stuff, and you weren't necessarily going to do that to begin with. Now you've done it, and that changes the appraisal somehow in the future or whatever. So that factor could be argued that maybe the extra area in that area is possibly taxable. But if it happens, now I'm going to say generally no, but let me inform you of the solution. The solution is that in the event that there's ever taxable territory, it's a blockchain, which means what we do is those factors end up causing justification for an automatic print, an automatic stamping, an automatic minting of extra tokens. And those automatically go to the tax area. In other words, no accounting necessary. It's all automatic. You don't have to do labor and reporting on any of this. Snap, it's all automatic. It's totally hands-free. Once you set it in, it's set forever. There's a lot of ways I got that too, by the way. Once you do certain types of special settings, and you never have to equate it. You never have to worry about your income dropping because we're doing automatic equating. and then you have minting that occurs. It's blockchain. It's all automatic. Now, the thing is the other thing is once you do this, see, once you make these blockchains, you can't change the percentages. Now, people talk about, well, there could be ways to do that. But essentially, at the moment, I'm just going to explain it. You can't change the percentage. That means that they can't raise the tax ratio anymore. Once we do a certain decided area and we create the blockchain, that's it. That's it. We're done. And this is another way of also controlling government. See, if we do more of this, then we would stop these people from raising taxes because they wouldn't be able to do it. It's a locked blockchain item and they're not going to be able to do it. It's not allowed. Can't happen. It's just not mathematically possible. So it ends this runaway taxation and spending and brings efficiency. Yeah, brings great efficiency. Boom.